right, so this is David Greene from Bigger Pockets. That's who I'm going to be reviewing here. I just like to take videos and get other people's perspective on their viewpoint on real estate investing. So on this one, again, it's how to build real estate portfolio from scratch in 2023. So let's review. What's going on, real estate investors? Before we get to the next video, I'm going to make a quick announcement. I do have an ebook out to help you out through your real estate journey. So if you want more information, click the link down in the description below. Let's get to the next video.
The rates are higher and there's less buyers. Everyone's complaining about that. But I don't complain. I'm just going to look to play the game in the way it benefits me. You get some cash flow coming in. You go into these areas with constricted supply and very high wages that are going to grow. And you get the best of both worlds. As I'm building my portfolio from scratch, starting over, I'm going to do something creative you might not have thought of. In a world where David Greene has lost his entire real estate portfolio, doom and destruction has fallen upon the land. This hero's journey has started. He's decided he's not going to quit or give up, but he's got to build it all again. In this episode, you'll learn how this will happen and what he will do. Alright, that may be a little dramatic, but I am trying to figure out if I had to start my own real estate investing journey and build a new portfolio all over again in 2023, what would I do? So let's kind of talk through this, okay? So I've lost everything, or maybe I just turned 18, and now like, hey, I've got bright skies, and well, I guess we probably won't be looking at bright skies right now. The market's a little bit challenging. Starting over with my portfolio, there's a few things I'm going to be thinking about wanting to get right. The first is the architecture of the portfolio itself. I probably don't want to scale all in one asset class. I don't want all short-term rentals. I don't want all small multifamily. I don't want all large multifamily, and I don't want a bunch of just single-family rentals. I don't want to own only trailers or glamping sites. I like a mix of different assets going into my portfolio because I like the idea of mitigating the risk of certain asset classes as well as increasing strengths of certain areas. For instance,
all right, so I understand his point on this one. He wants to kind of diversify himself. I'll tell you how I started off. I wanted to start in one sector, which was single family properties, and that way I can learn that better, perfect it, and then if I wanted to scale and do multi-families or mobile home parks, then I would become better as I went along. But I personally, I see what he's saying, I understand his point, but however, I know as I started out, I started off in single family and crafted that to perfection and then moved on from there.
Since I know if I bought a property in Malibu, California, or Beverly Hills, or the best neighborhood in Manhattan, New York, I'm going to make more money than anywhere else. The appreciation is going to be absolutely fantastic over the long term, but I'm probably going to lose money every month as I'm building that equity. So what do? Do I risk losing the entire property and just gamble it all on equity? No. I'm going to need other things that are going to cash flow for me while I'm waiting for that equity to grow and for the market to move in that direction. So I'm going to buy some cash flowing assets that are going to get me by, but those aren't going to make me rich. I'm not going to blow it up based off of these like duplexes or triplexes in Wichita, Kansas. They may be super, super reliable and provide me income every single month, but they're never going to become multi-million-dollar equity type situations. So I mix them together. You get some cash flow coming in, you go into these areas with constricted supply and very high wages that are going to grow, and you get the best of both worlds. That's what I mean by portfolio architecture. So I'm really going to be thinking about how do I sprinkle in different assets into this portfolio. I want some short-term rentals that are going to cash flow really good, but you get too many of those, you hate your life. You're spending all your time dealing with it. So then I want to sprinkle in some other stuff that takes much less work. Maybe I want to invest in somebody else's syndication. Maybe I want to buy a multifamily property, just let the property manager take over managing those commercial things. Maybe I want a couple triple nets. It's one thing I'd be thinking about going into 2023.
Good idea. I understand his point once again. However, when you can focus on one thing at a time under one sector, like this, for example, when I first started out, I focused on just single family properties, tenant base of low income housing in Section 8. That way I got a guaranteed income coming in every single month. I started to perfect that, right? Single families, I wanted to work with that program. I understood that program. Then once I understood that program of low income housing, then I move on to something else and perfect it. All right. And when it comes to the single family houses, I'm looking at things that are going to cash flow. If they don't cash flow, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not looking at the appreciation. That's really the sprinkle on top, the little extra. But if the property doesn't cash flow, I'm not even going to deal with it. I'll move on to the next one.
So what I'd be thinking about location, right? It's tough when you jump into a market that's already been run up really high or becomes oversaturated. Recently, I invested into South Florida, and those were really good buys, but I am afraid that a lot of other people have already invested in South Florida, and now there's a ton of competition for those properties where there wouldn't have been in some other markets. So going into 2023, I'm not only looking at population trends, where people are moving, where people are going, I'm also looking at where other investors are investing. So I don't want to be buying into an area where there's a bunch of other short-term rentals and there's more supply than there is demand. That would be a problem. I do like certain areas going into 2023 location-wise where I'd probably be focused on that you might not be thinking about. These would be states like Idaho, areas where Californians move into, but it's not super sexy and trendy for investors.
Okay, so he's diversifying himself one more time also because he's looking at the location. So So obviously he's investing in locations not close to him or out of state. My recommendation, especially as a new real estate investor, invest in your own backyard. Why? Because you'll know the area, right? So if you know the area, that's even better. Stay in your own backyard, in my opinion. You don't want to get too scattered and too diversified and start losing focus and opportunity. It's just best, in my opinion, and that's how I started off. Just invest in your own backyard, especially starting out.
Buying there, but Idaho real estate has been steadily increasing in value and is very unlikely to change because wealthy people from surrounding areas like the political environment, like the actual physical environment. I mean, I always, Montana was a laughing stock for me most of my life. My dad, my whole life, wanted to move to Montana because he wanted to hunt and he wanted to fish and he liked the great outdoors, and I just looked at it like it was a podunk area of backwards folks. And now I've seen some pictures of Montana and it is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. I think we're going to see more and more people moving into those areas. Now that social media and the internet in general has kind of shrunken the world and we can see what things look like outside of just our own little bubble, there's some absolutely stunning locations where more and more people are going to be moving into as work becomes remote or they retire. I also would be looking into investing in unique areas like some lakefront homes. Now, I'd be very careful that the lake that I'm buying the home in isn't losing water. Certain areas of our country tend to be having droughts, like California, every single year. Other areas get lots of rain. So
another thing to consider is in lakefront areas like that, it's expensive. If it's in another location and I'm not there in that area, so it's out of state, to me, that's just kind of risky. Also, insurance is going to be expensive. I don't know if he's going to mention that later, but you got to put that into context. So just because it's in a lakefront and it's beautiful doesn't mean everybody can afford it, but also as using a real estate investor, that can be kind of risky.
So I want to be buying in an area where I knew the lake was going to hold its, I don't know how they measure water, whatever the amounts of water that lake has is going to stay steady. But I think more and more people, as they realize they can't live on the beach, they can't live on the ocean, well, they just want to be around water. They're going to move into and vacation into lakefront properties. I would be reconstructing the portfolio and the vacation properties I have to be centered more towards that and probably a little bit less to just, I'm going to buy a property or a condo or a unit in a big city where people are traveling for business purposes. In my portfolio, as I'm building it, I'm also going to be looking at not just vacation rentals. I'm going to be looking at practical stuff like traveling professional rentals. So this would be like what we typically say is traveling nurses, but there's way more than just nurses. There's lots of professionals that travel. Nurses are probably the biggest asset class, and after the COVID situation, there was a lot of demand. If you don't talk to traveling nurses, you probably have no idea how much money they're making it.
This is very important. If you've seen my lives, my TikTok lives, I always talk about that. I use different tenant bases: low-income housing, traveling nurses, insurance companies. He's got a great point there, and I like this.
They're crushing it. Traveling nurses, and they deserve this money, get paid very, very well to have to move into new hospitals, learn new systems, new softwares, new coworkers, and they kind of have a crappy life because they're away from their family all the time as they're these hired guns that are working in to do the frontline work. All the nurses out there are like, preach it, David. It's about time that someone said it. It's very true. This is something that doesn't get mentioned very often. We don't talk about it when we talk about first responders, and we don't talk about it when we talk about innovative geniuses that are changing the game in the tech space. They're very important, and they get paid well, and oftentimes the hospital that they work at will pay their rent for them. So finding ways to support those people by giving them a great place to stay is something that I think should be included in my portfolio moving into 2023 as I'm rebuilding it. And I wouldn't just be thinking about amazing vacation destinations. I would be thinking about amazing literal units, properties designed for traveling professionals that need a place to stay in close proximity to where they're working. Now,
so another thing to keep in mind when it comes to traveling nurses, a lot of the nurses, the professionals, a lot of times they're not going to be in your property. They're going to be at their location of work. So what does that equate to? Less wear and tear on your property. Also, what I like about traveling nurses, it's really the hospitals that are paying you when it's traveling nurses. So these are called stipends. Very interesting thing to remember.
A big part about buying real estate is the fact you need money to actually do it. So let's talk about how I'm going to fund these deals as I'm going into 2023. Well, first off, in 2023, rates are probably going to stay higher than what they have been in the past. So the price of the asset's going to come down, but the interest rate's going to be going up. So your payment might even be higher than when the asset was really expensive. And this is just a problem of human nature. You guys all know it. When rates were low and homes were affordable, you couldn't buy one because every house was getting 12 offers. Now that rates are higher and there's less buyers, everyone's complaining about that. But I don't complain. I'm just going to look to play the game in the way it benefits me. So if I can buy a property for less money at a rate that's higher, but I know at some point rates are likely to come down and I can refinance, well, when I refi, I get the best of both worlds. I get the...
So here's another thing. Back to the tenant bases I talk about. You get low-income housing, mainly traveling nurses, insurance companies, event spaces. You're going to be charging higher than market rent. So that's what keeps you above, even if it does have a higher interest rates. And just like he says, later on, it's not if, it's when the interest rates come back. You can turn around and do a cash out refi, have a lower term on your interest rate, and you'll get that much more cash flow than you did before.
The lower rate and more affordability with the lower price that I paid for the house. Oh, and I also was able to actually buy the properties because I didn't have 12 other people that were bidding it up so high that I couldn't get it at all. So I'm very bullish on 2023 and the fact that this is a better market as an investor to be moving into. But how are you going to buy the properties? Well, first off, I'm going to save as much of my capital as I possibly can. Okay, capital is energy, or rather a store of energy. When you keep money in the bank, you keep money in your wallet, you're just storing the energy of the work that you put in to get that money. So you went and put in an 8-hour workday, you got compensated with a certain amount of money. That money is a storage for the energy that you put into that 8-hour day. You were taken away from your loved ones, from your hobbies, from the things you like to do. Whatever it was, you had to go work instead. You made a sacrifice for that. Money's where you hold the sacrifice, right? So I want to hold as much of that sacrifice that I made as possible. I don't want to put it into real estate, or if I'm going to, I want to put less money down and borrow more from somebody else. So I'm definitely going to house act one property a year at minimum. I'm going to get an FHA loan or a conventional loan at 5%. I'm going to put 3.5% to 5% down. I'm going to keep as much of that energy as I can. And if I want to put less of my money in the property, but I still have to pay for it, well, I need the money from somewhere else. So as I'm rebuilding my portfolio, I'm going to be considering which kind of loan products are the best for me. Now, I've already mentioned I'm going to house act. That's going to be a conventional loan at 5% down, or an FHA loan at 3.5%, or if you're a military veteran, a VA loan at 0% down, which is awesome. But if I'm actually buying investment property and I have to put down 20 to 25%, I'm probably going to use conventional loans when I can, but as I'm scaling, I can't just use conventional loans every time because they become a really big headache. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use different creative non-QM products like a DSCR loan, a debt service coverage ratio. This is a loan where the lender looks at your property as if it's a business, very similar to how commercial lending has been done for a long time. I use these loans all the time now, and I'll continue to use them in the future because
what's good about these loans is that they're not necessarily looking at your credit. As he stated before, the lender is going to be looking at the potential of the rent projected once you take over the property.
it's a lot less work and headache for me to collect all the documentation. They look at the property, they make sure it's going to cash flow, and if it does, they give me a loan based off the cash flow instead of based off the income that I'm making from my job. This also gives me flexibility if I want to leave the job, I want to work less hours, I don't want to be tied to it. I can still keep buying properties. You don't have that problem of, oh, if I quit my W-2, I can't get financing anymore. It's much easier this way. I'm going to look at creative solutions like bridge loans. These are loans that I often get where I buy a property and then I also borrow the money for the rehab, and my rate's a couple points higher than it normally would be, but once the property is stabilized, I go out and I refinance it into a 30-year fixed rate loan. Now, this can be beneficial because some of the best deals you'll get are in such bad shape that you can't use conventional financing to buy them, but you can use bridge loans to buy it. So what happens is all the other buyers that are not using a bridge loan don't know about loan products like I'm talking about right now. They write an offer and it has to be cash, and they think it's either cash or nothing, but you're smart. You're listening to Bigger Pockets. You reach out to me and I connect you with my homies at the One Brokerage and we help you out. And there's an in-between middle option of bridge where it's not cash or nothing. You can use this financing to buy the house and borrow money for the rehab a lot of the time, then refinance. Another thing that I've seen recently that I think is pretty cool are 40-year loans as opposed to 30-year loans. So instead of just getting a 30-year fixed rate, you can actually refinance into a 40-year fixed rate, which will definitely increase the amount of interest that you're paying over the course of the time you have the loan, but you will save money on your monthly payment and therefore you will increase your cash flow. So depending on my situation or the property, that's another option that I would look into if I want to maximize how much cash flow this property is putting off. As I'm building my portfolio from scratch, starting over, I'm going to do something creative you might not have thought of. I'm going to move my career from being a W-2 9-to-5 career type person. Maybe I'm working in healthcare, maybe I'm working in accounting, maybe I'm doing something I don't love and I really want to be doing real estate instead because we all love real estate. You wouldn't be listening to me if you didn't like real estate. I'm going to actually look for a way to move my career path into making more money in the real estate field. Becoming a real estate agent, becoming a loan officer, becoming an escrow officer, working for a construction company as a contractor, being an admin in one of these types of companies, getting into property management, getting into design, getting into consulting. There's so many ways that you can make money through real estate. Even if you're really good at math, but you just like real estate, get your degree as a bookkeeper or become a CPA and help other people save money on their taxes through real estate. Now, you don't have to choose full-time real estate or full-time W-2. Now you're in this cool middle ground where you're getting exposed to real estate and you're making money as you're doing it in this industry, and you're going to learn faster than other people because you work in the industry.
So, or you could become a realtor. That's a very good way to get started too. Now, I want to keep in mind, I mentioned realtor, but you don't have to be a realtor to be a real estate investor, okay? Those are two separate things.
Years of hosting the podcast, and there's a trend I've noticed. Some of the wealthiest people we've interviewed, when we said, how did you get into real estate? They said, I was a CPA. I was doing taxes for multimillionaires. I noticed all their money was coming from real estate, and a light bulb went off on my head. Real estate's where you make a bunch of money. It was people that were working in the space of real estate that got exposed, and then they talked to their clients who then connected them to the right people, and they were on a fast track to building wealth because they had all the right resources. And that leads me to my last point. As I'm building my portfolio, I want to get myself around the right people. It's not about Zillow and looking at houses. It's about finding the right agents, the right loan officers, the right property managers, the right handyman, the right contractors, the right bookkeeper, the right CPA, the right support staff, all the people that you're going to need that are going to teach you what to do, help you find what deals look the best, and smooth out the bumpy road that is real estate investing. So your net worth
is your network. You got to make sure that you're around a lot of people. That's the main thing. And you'll find out when you start networking with people, again, that becomes your net worth, because you'll just all of a sudden start having people kind of like gravitate towards you, believe it or not. So hang around people that are doing what you want to do, and you'll learn from them, but you'll also have you'll become like a magnet, and more people will come to you.
As I'm building my team in 2023, I'm looking for rock stars. And like I always say, rock stars know rock stars. So if I find a really good agent, they're likely to have a really good loan officer that they use, and that person's likely to have a really good CPA. And so forth.
Also, not only just have realtors on your team, I like to have realtors as well as wholesalers. Wholesalers are going out there hustling, finding these deals before they even hit the market. Very good to have realtors and wholesalers as well on your team to help you find deals.
I'm going to be going to meetups. I'm going to be in the forums. I'm going to be listening to what other people are doing. I'm going to be seeing where investing makes sense and what type of assets work. I'm going to be looking for the people that are really good at what they do, but they don't have unlimited funds. And so they can't buy every house, and they're going to be happy to tell me about what they're doing, why it's working, and how I can do it too. And I'm going to use all the power that BiggerPockets has to scale this new portfolio much wiser than I built it the first time. Let's hope that I don't lose my entire portfolio. I actually try to buy real estate in a way where that won't ever happen to me. And I'm very passionate about this. I talk frequently about building a financial fortress so that your portfolio will stand the test of time and not just be this cheap, flimsy skyscraper that you build really quick, and then when the market crashes, your property crashes as well. I hope you're doing the same, and going into 2023, I hope you consider a lot of the advice that I gave you and that we at BiggerPockets are offering you to help make you more money, give you a better life, and protect your investments for the rest of your days. Thanks.
So hopefully this brought you some good information and good content. What he's saying, I believe pretty much all the stuff he was talking about, that's how I actually got started in 2000. But you got to build a team. You don't want to diversify yourself too much. That's what I didn't agree with him about. I know what I did. I started off in single family, and then I gradually started to increase and develop and get into other investment types like multifamily, 100 units and up. But however you do it, stay focused, stay with it, network, and you'll become okay. All right? Hopefully this helped.